the cut. We'll see. Yeah, I think I did. Okay, is it
Me.
working? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm John Miglash for the Wisconsin DMA and the International Society for Strategic Marketing. I'm going to go over and look and see if LinkedIn is working because according to this thing, it might not be, but yeah, it seems to be working. Okay, so we're back to work. You might have noticed I took off Friday, or you might not have, because I do the sneaky pre-recorded links and then I chime in on the chat. But anyway, I did a lot of tea parties and swings and Play-Doh parties. The usual, what I usually do for every day. So now I'm back to the grind and have to get going. So it might be a little bit foggy today, but I hope not. Um, so let's go over to Tom Fishburne and see what he has to say for the week. Personal branding. He says, I don't know what's more annoying on LinkedIn. Pushy sales pitches, mindless clickbait, or self-promotional thought leadership. That's a good topic for one of our incessant LinkedIn polls. Or one of our weekly cartoons. I don't know if you noticed that one was pointing back at you, Tom. Anyway, back in 1997, Tom Peters wrote The Brand Called You. And he says, we're our CEOs of our own companies, Me Inc. And I did highlight this all up, but I guess it got eaten in the translation. He said, you don't belong to any company for life. Your chief affiliation isn't to any particular function. You're not defined by your job title, and you're not confined by your job description. Starting today, you're a brand. And that might have been a kind of a liberating idea back in the 1997s. And it was 6 years before LinkedIn launched in 2003. And I became a member in 2003, in case you want to know. And here's the point, though. Here's a really good point. Thinking of ourselves too much, period. Oh, too much as brands, too much, period, can take away from what's human and real. If everyone acts too much like a brand manager, all communication can start to feel like marketing. And again, blame me here. I produce more content than I ever have. I won't say than any of you, because maybe there isn't much content in it. Maybe it's just blabbling in a dark room. But there's a fine line between personal branding and self-promotion. It's not much of a line at all. And that's why we try to make these helpful. Had a great hour conversation on testing with a printer who is a member of the WDMA, so I give him credit for chipping in and sending some tangible love our way. But my hourly rate would be higher. But I hope it was helpful, and I think it would be. I think it will be helpful to the client as well as to the printer, because we worked out at least one tangible test that we can still do, even though the client didn't have any planning done to test anything. And so we'll at least give them something to think about. Okay, but anyway, what Jeff Bezos says is your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And of course, hard to know unless you read your Twitter or Instagram feeds, and I wouldn't take that as gospel either. Maybe it's what your family says about you. And we had a really wonderful weekend with almost all the family there, and some friends that we hadn't seen in maybe 20 years or something, and that was just wonderful. So maybe let your family beat you up, and it'll tell you what's real. Since you're a person I trust, I wanted to invite you to join my network on LinkedIn. That goes by with a briefcase. That's about right. That's about what it is. Now, this one I wanted to get to because I'll tell you why. 7 types of LinkedIn requests. I have noticed we have blue shirts in common. A tenuous link. Now, that's only funny because I'm doing more work with my old website whitetail.com, which has been totally revamped. And if you're into hunting, you might want to go over and check it out. We're trying to invite content creators because there's some concern that people are getting their content blocked or taken down or whatever, because hunting can be confused with animal cruelty, and other things. So I went on LinkedIn one day about 2 weeks ago, and I just started clicking on people that had camouflage. I think I put the word hunting in there in the search, and if they had a camouflage picture, I clicked on them. Camouflage shirt on. So, sometimes these tenuous links are the best you can do. Do you have 15 minutes to talk with a total stranger? Yeah, okay. Interested in agile, disruptive, digital blockchain? Buzzword artist. I can run a team that can help with whatever it is that you do. Yeah, I get those a lot. I'm so busy networking, I don't have time to write a note. If you accept, I'll thank you with a nonstop sales pitch. I get those. I tell them this is a chat window. This is not a publishing company. And someone you actually know, you never say hi to, I guess. Is that what that white one is about? Anyway, I found this interesting. We'll go over to Facebook fake news fueled by six-fold click bias. Now, of course, anyone who's taken Journalism 101 knows that journalism is about getting people to read the story. It's about how to write a headline. It's about boiling it down in a way that may not be completely consistent with the story, but is enough to get your interest. And so it's not a big surprise that fake news gets better clicks than actual content. Now, when you read this article, which I will post for you, but I'm not going to go down there, it talks about how the false news got much more clicks than the CNN or World Health Organization news. And that was substantiated by Facebook's own analysis of what fake news consists of. And I thought that was funny. So if you think CNN doesn't play that same game, you're nuts. How many people still think Trump said drink bleach for COVID, right? Or all the other things, or that racists are fine people, and those are still up there today. CNN is still playing those little games. So the point is that people are curious about. I always see the one of a cute starlet from my youth, that I probably had a crush on, and it says, "But look what she looks like today," or something. And then you go through 40 different stars, and they show their young picture and their old picture, and you never do see the one you were invited to look up. So that's the way we are as humans. Okay, this one I wanted to get to because it's really an interesting article on the history of the sales funnel. And Tom Roach calls it the cockroach of marketing concepts, meaning that it hides in the dark sometimes when you shine light on it, but it basically never goes away. The sales funnel is nearly 100 years old, and there's little evidence that it reflects how advertising actually works. It's been the cockroach of marketing concepts. It just seems to keep going and going and going. Excuse me. Maybe it's those kids giving me a cold. They all had colds. Okay. He says that it started out in the door-to-door sales industry with the linear attention, interest, desire, and action model of the late 19th century. But he found a book called The Bond Salesman that mentions this and mentions they were selling telephones, I believe, and it was a sales aid for people in a direct business. And it says the salesman should visualize his whole problem of developing the sales steps as forcing by compression a broad and general concept of facts through a funnel which produces the specific and favorable consideration of one fact. So you paint the picture, you boil it down to a decision. Okay? But it's facts being forced down the funnel, not people. It's a sale in a single engagement. It's you get your foot in the door and you don't pull it out. Okay? However, if you do a Google image search, you find zillions of funnels. And according to Les Bennett, he first became aware of the funnel in 1990, in the 90s, in a Volkswagen strategy presentation, and it was so little known then that the planner was assumed to have invented it. A couple of criticisms. It's become the go-to tool for digital marketing training courses. The funnel is essentially a sales tool, not a customer data or science-led framework. Okay? The first criticism is it doesn't encompass post-purchase loyalty. Now, let's back up a little bit. So in 1982, I came from a background of straight commission field sales, calling on businesses, and telemarketing follow-up sales. And Vic Hunter, my mentor, came from direct marketing, catalog sales. And so we put our heads together and came up with integrated marketing. And let me see if I can go back to the camera. We'll go over to the camera for a minute. I don't know if you'll be able to see this. Sometimes I have to get less light on it. Oh, does this look a little like a funnel? No, this way. Okay, that's our diagram. And what it showed was that mail was, you could get mail for 45 cents per piece, cost per contact. Telephone sales was a couple of bucks, and field sales was a couple of $100. Okay, and the costs have gone up. But this three-tiered marketing approach, there you can see it better back here. The three-tiered marketing approach gave us a way to not only change the content and force the content through a funnel, but change the cost per contact so that we would market broadly at the beginning and attract attention. And then we would do follow-up with lead qualification, and then we would finally send it out to the sales force for the close, essentially. It's a little bit like The Machine that I talked about it's a book called The Machine, and by Jason Marsh Rolfe, I think is his name, or something close to that. You'd get it if you looked. Okay, now the idea that it doesn't encompass management is, of course, not the way we designed it. This was the lead qualification, and the next criticism of the funnel is it's too linear. Well, ours loops around, and it goes around and around and around. So if you generate a lead and we call you up and you say, well, I'm not interested right now, but I'd like some more information, and call me in 6 months, we would keep track of that. And so it would loop around, and it would keep looping you around until you were more ready to buy. Then it would drop down to the sales force, and they would go out and see you, and they might hear back, well, I'm not the real decision maker. I'm just putting together an RFP or something. Well, when are you going to make a decision? Oh, maybe 6 months. So then it would boot it back up. It would boot it back up to the telemarketing, and then they would follow up in 6 months, go through the process again. So you could keep booting it around forever. But once you became a customer, and this was actually, this particular report was published in 1984. Now this one was, and it was for Blue Cross Blue Shield for their sales process. And this one then showed the follow-up methods, and it had, mailings to customers. It had follow-up phone calls, and many of our customers, we implemented programs where they would just call the customers that were expiring, and they would start with the most valuable ones. And, if they had questions or other issues, they would then port it out to the sales force. And so it was a very well integrated program. We implemented it for Amoco Oil for their salespeople calling on the gas stations, and then we implemented it for Deluxe Check, and then about that time I went to Sales Guides, but 3M implemented it, and then out in the West Coast, HP, I believe, implemented it, and Vic did a bunch of other car or gasoline companies, and a lot of different companies. But I think at HP, it crossed paths with Tom Siebel, who changed it into CRM, customer relationship management, and he focused on that last part, okay, which you can, but it has two components, and there's actually a larger diagram that shows them put together. Here it is, in case you think I didn't think of that. This is hard. I maybe should do a webinar on this just for the fun of it, because it does come back from the 80s, and as far as I know, and then Vic actually added the funnel instead of the triangle, the upside down triangle that I had in here. Vic changed it to a funnel. And that would have been in the 80s, a full decade before Les Binet saw it for Volkswagen. So it's a powerful concept. And here's the loopy loop. Ours was not linear at all. And here's another one. Now nowadays, where the, whoops, somebody's calling me. I don't know who it is. Now they call my Google phone number, which they never did for a long time. Anyway, whoops, back over here to 10 at 10. Okay, here is the Hankin hexagon. And James was actually a guest on my show, and so that was very, very exciting. We had a great time. And what James has developed is the fact that now online, unlike our model, which was where information was driven from the manufacturer or the distributor down the funnel, as the author says here, Tom says it was an information funnel, and the manufacturer was in control of the process. So when we followed up, we would say, well, we have additional information. They wouldn't be able to just go online and get that information. And so as long as we controlled the process, it was a fairly linear process. But now, because the reviews and all the rest of the stuff, I had bacon for breakfast. Always gives me indigestion. Too much information. Okay, because the process is customer driven, now the customer can bounce around, or the prospect, any direction they want. Boom, 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 like a pinball machine. Now, I'm not saying that's optimal, but it is true. And now you can look at the number of clicks you get in each of these dots, and you can optimize or improve the areas where you're weakest. And I think it's brilliant. It's not a funnel, it's a hexagon. But way to go, James. We'll have to mention him in the credits or whatever. So the point is that Tom likes the funnel's flexibility and utility. It does reflect the need to target broadly, to cast the net wide for prospects, which is still existing even in the hexagon. The tapering suggests deploying more targeted means to refresh mental availability. And if your price and margin is high enough, then it makes sense to get telesales involved or direct mail involved. To think that all of these purchases are the same value and that you should do it all online is insane. We can see that now. The idea of having multiple levels of contact in both cost, care, and content, pretty good, huh? Is insane. So Mark Richardson says, if you think the sales funnel is dead, you've mistaken tactics for strategy. There is a role for this, and it makes sense, right? It's the role of online ads as signposts, and this is the equivalent of the name above the street, the high street front door. It says it in light, but you also want to invite people to come. You want to keep in touch other ways, and my advocacy is that you should tailor the cost to the value of the customer. So if you back in the 80s, people would only have Salesforce, or they would only have direct mail. Well, the truth is that for some customers, the mailing, the catalog would give them better communication than the Salesforce that they never saw, right? And for others, they needed a salesman to come in and solve their particular big problems. Direct mail wouldn't cut it. There's ways to adjust that, but that's basically the concept of the integrated marketing. And so, anyway, an excellent article, and I think you should take the time. Go over to WDMA.org and subscribe. We've got the website running again, thank heaven. And we're probably going to change hosts, but it's all there for your edification. Have a great day. Like and share. Your friends will know you're smart.